New charges of hypocrisy are swirling around the Clinton campaign tonight. They have to do with Hillary Clinton's condemnation of for-profit universities in general and Trump University in particular. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen tells us tonight the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton family directly have made a lot of money from for-profit education.
Hillary Clinton's official schedule for August 17, 2009 lists a small private dinner at the State Department closed to the press for experts in higher education. 2 weeks earlier, according to an email first disclosed by the website Inside Higher Ed, Mrs. Clinton emailed Chief of Staff Cheryl Mills ordering her to invite someone from the institution that the secretary called the fastest growing college network in the world, Laureate University, started by Doug Becker, who Bill Clinton likes a lot. It's a for-profit model that should be represented. Laureate has also donated between $1 and $5 million to the Clinton Foundation. The schedule shows Mills complied and that the dinner was attended by Laureate's senior vice president, Joseph Duffy, who had once awarded President Clinton an honorary doctorate. 8 months after Mrs. Clinton's private dinner, Laureate, which operates 84 schools in 30 countries, hired former President Clinton as honorary chancellor, a job that saw him traveling to locales like Madrid and touting the company alongside VIPs like Prince Philippe of Spain. The job paid Mr. Clinton $17.6 million over 5 years, and he stepped down from it.
I'm running for president.
12 days before his wife launched her campaign for the White House.
It clearly shows that she intervened on behalf of a for-profit organization, and within months her family personally benefited to the tune of, well, over $17 million. That's a lot of money. They got wealthy off of what appears to be her intervention in including this organization in a very exclusive club.
In a statement, Laureate said the former president visited 19 Laureate campuses in 14 countries across a 5-year term that expired when it did by previous arrangement. The State Department said it couldn't say what was going through Mrs. Clinton's mind when she made a point of including Laureate at the 2009 dinner.
The State Department regularly engages with a range of academics, NGOs, think tanks, business leaders, speakers, commentators on a range of issues.
A spokesman for the Clinton campaign told me any linkage of Laureate's hiring of the former president and Secretary Clinton's private dinner is, quote, absurd. The campaign adds the fact that Mrs. Clinton has taken a tough stand on some for-profit colleges acting in a predatory way, saddling students with debt, shows, Brett, that she did not allow her husband's contract with Laureate to influence her policy decisions.
Okay, James, thank you. While former President Bill Clinton says his family's foundation will no longer accept corporate and foreign donations if his wife becomes president, there is already a possible exception. The Clinton Health Access Initiative has not yet decided whether it will cut off that major source of its funding. Also tonight, Chelsea Clinton does not plan to follow in her father's footsteps and resign from the foundation board if her mother wins in November. Meantime, a judge has ruled in favor of Judicial Watch, saying that the State Department has to come forward with these additional emails by September 13th in this Clinton email investigation. Over the past few weeks, we've heard Clinton campaign spokespeople say there is no smoking gun of any quid pro quo from the Clinton Foundation or the State Department. Last night, Secretary Clinton said, "I know there's a lot of smoke and there's no fire." Here's what Trey Gowdy said today about the investigation and the FBI and what exactly Clinton's lawyers did about the deleted emails.
Remember, James Comey said she was not indicted because he didn't have sufficient evidence on the issue of intent. I didn't see any questions on the issue of intent. He said he didn't go forward with charges because she didn't have specific criminal intent. I didn't see any questions on that. She said she did it for convenience, but I didn't see the follow-up questions in the interview I read. Why did you delete emails that you kept for 1.5 years? And they didn't just push the delete button. They had them deleted where even God can't read them. They were using something called BleachBit. You don't use BleachBit for yoga emails or for bridesmaids emails. When you're using BleachBit, it is something you really do not want the world to see.
By the way, BleachBit is this technology that essentially shreds files, hides their contents, prevents data recovery, overwrites the free disk space to hide any previously deleted files, and they claim maintains privacy. Obviously, it keeps the FBI out of those spots, too.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that Trey Gowdy just made. There are apparently other details of just what lengths the Clinton team, the Clinton lawyers and others, went to make sure that nobody would ever see these emails that they had decided to, that they had control of, that they had decided to delete. And I think that's a significant point, in part because of the context in which this whole discussion takes place. I mean, you have Hillary Clinton, who didn't secure her emails during the time that she was Secretary of State, or for, as Gowdy points out, for the year and a half after she left office. Suddenly, when she learns that Congress and other government agencies are interested in seeing them, decides to go to these extreme measures, I would say extraordinary measures, to make sure that nobody will ever read them again, I think is suggestive. And it goes back to the press conference that James Comey gave on July 5th, where he said, he made two statements within moments of one another that were basically in tension, where he says, on the one hand, we have no evidence that they did any of this on purpose, that they were trying to hide anything. And then just moments later, he said, but the lawyers took these pretty extraordinary steps to make sure that we couldn't do any forensic recovery. And I think we're likely to see that tension between those two statements and the intent question that Trey Gowdy raised get a lot more attention here in the coming days.
All right, Quinnipiac is out with this poll, Heidi, and if you look at question 6, which is the honest and trustworthy question, would you say that Hillary Clinton is honest? Quinnipiac has yes, 20%. Is that, that's independent votes, 20%, 29% all likely voters, 66 not honest. This falls into that category. Donald Trump, obviously, his numbers are upside down as well.
It does, although I think her numbers had been hovering around 60. His numbers had been hovering around 60. So I think this is evidence that this latest round of controversy over the foundation is hurting her. It's hurting her numbers. We never thought that she would necessarily recover in the span of this election, but what we're seeing is that this is going backwards for her as well.
O'Reilly, thanks for watching us tonight. George Soros, the Democratic Party, and Hillary Clinton. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. As you may know, the 85-year-old billionaire is a far-left fanatic whose Open Society organization advocates no borders anywhere in the world. According to Soros, everyone should be able to go wherever they want for any reason and stay there. Recently, hackers believed to be backed by Russia exposed more than 2,000 documents connected to Soros and his Open Society. The information very disturbing. Soros has given about $10 million to groups opposed to the policies of Israel. He has funded individuals accusing Israel of war crimes. He has given a variety of grants to people who literally hate the Jewish state of Israel. In addition, Soros has funded investigations of individuals here in the USA who are opposed to radical Islam. People like Pamela Geller, Frank Gaffney, Liz Cheney, and Cliff May. Mr. May will be here in just a few moments. Finally, George Soros has donated about $13 million to the Democrats this election cycle. That includes $7 million to a Hillary Clinton super PAC. 12 years ago, here's what Mrs. Clinton said about George Soros.
We have been given an extraordinary blessing, and at this moment in time, our country needs us, and we need people like George Soros, who is fearless and willing to step up when it counts.
Now, to be fair, that soundbite is dated, but the Clinton campaign is accepting money from Soros this year, as stated, and that may present a problem for the secretary. You may remember that Donald Trump got hammered by the media for not disavowing David Duke quickly enough. Duke, of course, a far-right hater. But now we have a far-left individual, Soros, bent on harming Israel, America's strongest ally in the Middle East. So how will the media cover that? Again, Soros, one of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party. Talking Points believes the mainstream press will largely ignore the Soros story, even though it's very important. Does the Democratic Party advocate open borders worldwide, a situation that would make it easy for Islamic terrorists to kill at will anywhere? Does the Democratic Party support the enemies of Israel? Do Jewish voters even know what's happening? Again, a major situation brought to you by Russian hackers and presented to a largely apathetic press when it comes to reporting the truth about the upcoming election. Summing up, the Democratic Party must comment on George Soros and his activities. We've requested a statement from the DNC, and we will let you know tomorrow if they reply. And that's a memo. Now for the top story reaction. Joining us from Washington is the aforementioned Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. First of all, do you know anything more about Soros and his crew stalking you or whatever they're doing?
Well, it wasn't news that we were being trolled, targeted for delegitimization and defamation. And as you know, Bill, I run a think tank, a policy institute formed after 9/11. It focuses on national security. That means we focus largely on jihadism, Islamism, radical Islam, call it what you will. We knew there were these various individuals on Twitter. They were tweeting against us. They were publishing articles, mostly in left-wing journals, about us, trying to dig up dirt on us. What we didn't know until last weekend was that George Soros was giving them hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to do this. That came as a surprise.
All right, so they're paid assassins to try to get you and the other people we mentioned. Now, I don't understand why Soros would single you out when your organization is basically exposing a major threat to the United States and the world, Islamic Jihad. That's what you do. So why would Soros want to muzzle you or hurt you?
You know, this was worse 5 years ago than it is now, but it's not over. There are a lot of those who think, look, this is violent extremism. It has no relationship whatsoever to Islam. You can't even talk about that. If you say, look, not that we have a problem with Islam, but I would say we have a problem with movements within Islam, then you must be an Islamophobe. And I don't mind if people want to debate me, argue with me. People come on your show and debate. It's very edifying. It's very entertaining. But what they want to do when they call you an Islamophobe is they want to shut you down. They want to get you out of the debate.
It's like a homophobe or a bigot, a racist and all that. But why does he want to shut you down? Is George Soros loony enough to think that an open border world, a borderless world, where ISIS could move wherever they want with any problem, is a safe world, is a good thing? Is he that crazy?
Apparently, there's even evidence to show that he looks upon the refugee crisis in Europe, and it's a terrible crisis, as an opportunity for him to further his ideas and his policies. And as you pointed out, in a Middle East that is melting down, where you have genocide taking place among Christian, Yazidi, and other communities, what he's doing is targeting the one open society in the whole region, and that's Israel. And it's particularly ironic that as he's pursuing what is a kind of McCarthyism, he is the founder of the Open Societies Foundation. How does an Open Society Foundation try to shut down debate, try to demonize and delegitimize Israel, and try to do all the kinds of things it's doing, like taking advantage of the refugee crisis?
I think it's safe to say that by taking $13 million from George Soros, the Democratic Party has some explaining to do. Do they not?
Look, imagine if the Koch brothers, I don't know them, and that if they tried to demonize groups on the right, groups on the left, because they were too soft on the Muslim Brotherhood. This would be a big story, it seems to me, in the liberal press. Why isn't it, as you suggest, why isn't this a story, except in conservative media, that you have George Soros pursuing these things? And yes, it is something that should be considered, since he is a huge supporter of all these left-wing causes, and yes, of Democrats.
Well, he's the second biggest donor, I believe, at this point for the Democratic Party this election cycle. Yet, as you pointed out, and we're not a conservative show, as you know, Mr. May. I mean, this is a really interesting story. I mean, how an American billionaire can pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to attack you and other people who object to Islamic terrorism. I mean, that's the crux of the story. And then that very same person involved in that and delegitimizing Israel is one of the biggest funders of the Democratic Party. That's huge. That's a huge story. That would be like the Klan coming up with money and pumping it into the Republican Party. I mean, think about it. The Klan, a racist crew, all right, who wants to put Jews and blacks and minorities in a bad position, okay? And it's horrifying what they do, all right? As opposed to Soros, a far left crank who wants to harm Israel and wants to shut you up. I mean, I don't understand the big difference between Soros and David Duke. Do you?
I don't, and I think that members of the more liberal and more progressive press ought to be answering why this isn't newsworthy, why only certain things are newsworthy, and why somebody far to the left and further to the left than they are why they won't investigate, report, cover, and talk about these things.
Where is this?
And where is it? I don't think you're going to see it in tomorrow's papers.
Now, to be fair, we looked for connections between Soros and President Obama. We did not find any. In fact, the two had a falling out of some kind. But Hillary Clinton, you know, she's $7 million already into her campaign from Soros. So, again, we need to get to the bottom of this. And, Mr. Mayor, we appreciate you coming on this evening.
Glad.
Next on the rundown, a Democrat will reply to our investigation. Then later, President Obama orders more accused terrorists released from Guantanamo Bay. Continue now with our lead story. Radical leftist George Soros, donating $13 million to the Democratic Party so far, is exposed by Russian hackers. Here now in New York City, Dr. Jeannie Zaino, who teaches political science at Iona College. As a Democrat, how do you react to what we just told the folks?
You know, I mean, look, George Soros is a billionaire philanthropist. He has raised an awful lot of money for democratic causes, causes that people on the left care about. He has donated money, you know, and you look at all the people who have raised money who haven't donated, all the billionaires who aren't giving. And you have to give him credit for that. And then I think you look at the hacking and you see some of the things coming out and it makes people uncomfortable. But I'm not sure you can blame George Soros or Hillary Clinton for the fact that we live in a political system that allows money to be spent in this way.
Well, you're deflecting the issue. So what you're saying is Mussolini made the Italian trains run on time, so you have to give him credit, even though he was a fascist pig.
I am half Italian, so I'm not going to respond to that.
But that argument doesn't hold weight, because what we're dealing with now is we're dealing with a man who we now know provided hundreds of thousands of dollars to discredit Americans like Cliff May and Liz Cheney, who were simply trying to protect the country against Islamic terrorism, number one. Number two, has donated millions of dollars to try to run down Israel. All right? So now, how as a Democrat do you process those two facts?
You know, look, if you look at the foundation, it is $13 billion in 33 years. That is an awful lot of money. It has gone an awful lot of places. When you're dealing with that amount of money, yes, it's going to go places that make certain people uncomfortable.
But this is a Soros-directed. This is his philosophy.
Absolutely.
Now, the Democratic Party is accepting his money.
Absolutely. Right? As the Republican Party would as well.
Let's keep it with the Democrats, Doctor, with all due respect. All right? They're accepting the money. Do they have an obligation to explain whether they support Soros's vision of open borders everywhere in the United States, his vision of denigrating Israel? Does the Democratic Party, Donna Brazile as the head, have an obligation to explain that to you, a Democrat?
I think they absolutely have to be transparent about where that money is coming from and what it is directed to. I absolutely agree with that.
But we know where it's coming from and where it was directed to. Do they have to explain why they're accepting
it? I don't think the argument that the Democratic Party is anti-Israel is going to hold any water. So, I do believe in transparency. If they are accepting money, which they are, they need to say where it's coming from and where it's going. And if you want that money regulated, it would be incumbent on all of us to get together, which I firmly believe, and regulate that money.
Well, look, that's a whole different debate.
But it's not a whole different debate.
Yes, it is, because this
if it's not regulated, how do you control
this investigation is very personal. It's not a policy investigation. Here's a man giving an enormous amount of money to the Democrats, who believes that we should not protect ourselves at all and allow anyone in the world in here at any time. That's flat out dangerous. And as a man who's funding anti-Israel people to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. That's personal. And I'm surprised as a Democrat that you don't take it personally.
I do take it.
It puts you, your family, and every Jew in Israel in danger.
I do take it personally.
According to Politico, a thing, Hillary Clinton aims to run out the clock with 75 days until Election Day. When you look at where she is now in the context of a campaign, that's like a quarterback taking a knee at the start of the fourth quarter. So rather than persuasively dispel accusations of cronyism, she puts a closed early sign on the front of the shop and hides in a crawl space under the stairs. The campaign slogan is, "I'm with her," but it should be, "Where'd she go?" She's less visible than Pluto, on the run longer than Whitey Bulger. Even Waldo is wondering where in the world she is. Here's why Hillary's in hiding. She's counting on Trump to continue being Trump between now and then, while Trump counts on her scandals to explode. Each candidate's secret weapon happens to be each other. They're playing chicken with their own flaws, banking on the other's mistakes. So who's winning? Well, Hillary assumes we'll all grow bored of the emails. After all, with emails, there's no tape, there's no visual. But Trump, he's a walking spectacle, the opposite of boring. His deeds always hijack the spotlight. And that's a trend that Hillary could ride all the way to November, except for 3 obstacles. The debates. When the Empress of emails meets Captain Excitement. Try running out the clock on that stage with no Candy Crowley in sight. All right, Kennedy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg.
You notice I used everybody's last names in honor of you.
Thank you.
Do you think this is a good strategy for her to go into hiding? She's like Julian Assange.
Yeah, it's the only strategy she got. I mean, if you remember when she left the State Department, that's when she had her highest favorability ratings because she was finally going away. And I think the United States of the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. She doesn't do press conferences because she says things that she'll be held accountable for months. She always makes news for all the wrong reasons. When she does that, she's bad on the stump and she's not particularly good in debate. So all she has to do is keep her head down, get through these 3 debates. And, you know, speaking of Julian Assange, we don't know what that final WikiLeaks will hold.
They call it the October surprise, Eric.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's coming, but who knows?
So Hillary Clinton's not hiding. She's not closed for business. What she is doing, though, is she's fundraising. She's in Hollywood. She's in the Hamptons. She's on the Upper East Side, and she's putting together a big war chest because, as you guys aptly point out, she's going to have a hard time in the debates going up against Trump. Trump, like him or hate him, he's an attack dog. He will go after it. He won't shy down. And then after these debates or in between the debates, she's going to have to spend some money on ads and try and clean up the mess that she probably is going to leave on the debate stage. But it's important to note, and we talked about this yesterday, and I wrote about it a little bit, was that Donald Trump got to Louisiana to talk to the flood victims. President Obama got to Louisiana to talk to the flood victims. Hillary Clinton was in her little private meetings, cocktail parties raising big money.
But I hear there was a water fountain at the cocktail party. So at least she got to some body of water, Dana. And I think that counts for something. I always think about this thing. If this was going to be a problem, why did the DNC continue with her? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like if this email thing was going to be such a catastrophe, wouldn't they have...
Well, I don't know if they knew at the time. I don't think that there were many Democrats. Like if Joe Biden had known that it was going to be this bad, if anybody had any clue that was going to be, that they would be in this situation, would they have changed things? Possibly, but also, you know, they have had this machine ready to go since 2008 when Barack Obama won, and she was going to be the heir apparent.
About this whole email situation and the Clinton Foundation and other things. Charles, please tell us something.
What matters is, were there any that were as a result of giving money to the Clintons? The answer is yes, and that is in itself damning. It may not be illegal, but it's damning. The point of giving money is to get access. We accept that in our campaigns. If access were considered a quid pro quo, the jails would be groaning with politicians. Up until now, it's been access, which by tradition and convention, we seem to accept as corrupt perhaps, but not illegal.
Corrupt but not illegal.
Yeah, so if it's not illegal, then what is? I mean, yeah, access is one thing, but we've already found it goes beyond access. The access leads to the deals, and the deals are what is the quo of the quid pro quo. You have a deal that's consummated based on the pay for access. You've excluded other people who may want to do the deal in Wall Street terms. That's insider trading like. There are so many things that, why would you do that?
If I'm a serial killer and I say to you, I have paid for the services of over 4,000 streetwalkers, and I have only decapitated 3 of them. So that is 3,997 streetwalkers who are still walking the streets, and that is a phenomenal number. And you are only cherry-picking the ones who no longer breathe or have heads. How dare you cherry-picking?
Yeah, I love your analogy because it's so fascinating and somewhat scandalous. But in terms of this event here with Hillary Clinton, you guys have yet to say, oh, here is a deal that was made because somebody put money in her pocket.
What about Uranium One?
That's not a deal.
That's a deal if you are the Russian government who now owns 20% of the world's uranium rights.
Nobody thought,
Dana, last word on this. Is this ever going to get beyond bickering? Are they going to be able to say this is illegal, quid pro quo, or what?
Well, I don't know. I mean, and one of the examples is that would it have been better if the wind plant had gone to a foreign company and not an American company that got the business. I don't know. I mean, are you doing your job as a State Department secretary if that happens? The Clinton campaign might try to make that case. If they have to start going point by point, it could get, one, boring, two, possibly much more interesting from their perspective. They could say, look what we did on behalf of America, or it could be even worse, because one of the things that Red State wrote about today was Hillary Clinton on this whole idea of running out the clock. It really is pretty gross what they were doing. The AP and others, Judicial Watch, had asked for her schedule way back in April, and and Hillary Clinton people had said,
AP
it is
asked for
just
it
so
3
difficult.
years ago. 3 years ago, AP.
3 years, and they said, oh, it is just so difficult to do it, and she slow-walked it to this point because she knew that this problem of this question of who she met with, if there was a connection with the Clinton Foundation, was going to come out. She tried to get it past the election, but now it's coming home to roost right in the sweet spot the last 70 days.
So that's the problem, which is that the optics, that's too a political term, but the appearance of impropriety, given the fact that people already have some high level of distrust and that her opponents are so critical of her, it's opened up, a nightmare for her. And from my perspective, I think it is. I think the Boston Globe is right to say they should shut down that foundation.
Why?
Why? Because it opens up the door, the kind of questions you're asking.
If it's questionable now, why wasn't it questionable 2009 to 13 when she was Secretary of State?
I agree with you. I think it was questionable all along, but I'm saying there's no evidence that there's actual law breaking or impropriety.
We must shut it down.
Shut it down because you know what? The appearance is so bad.
I have to shut this down, and because we're going to be talking about this for a long time, so we might as well save some of the powder. Anyway.
Exclusive, South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy, the former chairman of the Select Committee on Benghazi. Great to see you, sir. So today you had an interesting day taking a look at some documents that the FBI had prior to you getting a look at them. Did you find anything particularly interesting about these documents that Hillary provided the FBI?
Yes, ma'am. Keep in mind, one notebook were the classified emails that she handled so negligently. The other notebook are the witness interviews, the summaries, what we call 302s. My number one takeaway, Megan, is there's no reason in the world you could not and should not be able to look at the same witness interviews that I had to go to Washington and look at in a classified setting. You and your viewers should be able to read summaries of these witness interviews. The second takeaway is a lot of the FBI's time and attention was spent debunking and refuting these fantastically false statements that Secretary Clinton made at the inception of this email story. And the third takeaway, remember, Director Comey said that he could not indict, did not have a realistic probability of a successful prosecution on the issue of intent. So I looked to see what witnesses were questioned on the issue of intent, including her, and I didn't see that many questions.
Let's go back to number two.
Issue.
Let's go back to the second point, which is how much time they had to spend debunking what you say were lies or falsehoods that she told. What do you mean by that?
Oh, even something as seemingly innocuous as us referring to Sidney Blumenthal as her advisor. Remember, she got really upset when we used that term. You'll never guess which term the FBI used when they described Sidney Blumenthal and his relationship to her. He was interviewed. I think you would find very interesting what Colin Powell had to say and juxtapose that with what Clinton supporters have said over the last 48 hours. You go back, the multiple devices, how many phones she had, the very reason she set it up. All of that proved to be fantastically
And I want to
false.
ask you this. So she also, of course, claimed that she never sent or received classified information. We now know that that's not true. I know you thought it might be interesting if the American people could see who sent some of the emails that she received with the classified information. What do you mean by that? Why would that be so interesting?
Well, right now, even Congress can't see the identities of them. They are so classified that even a congressman in a skiff with no telephone, no iPad, no notes, cannot even see who the author or the originator of that email string was. That is how classified that information was that she was handling on a non-secure server. So Sidney Blumenthal is one author. Of course, you know Cheryl Mills and Numa Abedin and Jake Sullivan, but there are even some originators that even members of Congress cannot see the identity of them because of the nature of the information.
But meanwhile, she was saying, I had no idea. No, classified, no. Congressman Trey Gowdy, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.